let's get ready for our next speaker, who will do a talk called Self-Organization and Web3 to Combat Housing Challenges. Everyone give a huge round of applause to Barcelona's own Clara Gromaches.
Thank you, that was really nice. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, buona tarda. Cool. So, today I want to bring into the table the current housing challenges that we are facing in cities, but also in rural areas. And it's something that is happening globally. It's not a thing of Barcelona. My name is Clara. I'm an architect. I build self-sustainable housing and also cooperative housing organized as, well, like social cooperative housing. Apart from that, I work on Web3 at Diorg, which is a collective of Web3 developers that are building really cool stuff. And my goal is to bring this Web3 technology with my area of expertise. So, we are talking about housing today because it should be understood as a real universal right and as well as a public good, at least a fraction of the total market stock. Because honestly, it's a fundamental human need because it provides shelter, privacy, security, and also it's kind of like unlocks the well-being and also like the quality of life of individuals and also their communities. And housing is also important because it unlocks the rest of the human rights, say access to water, hygiene, educational, professional, and personal development, as well as enhances some of the other human rights, like economic rights, cultural rights, or even like social rights. All right. We know that, but the reality is that we are contemplating how in our cities, in our territories, rents are getting higher and higher. Properties end up in hands of big landlords, if not international funding, and our salaries are stagnant. So I'm going to go through some numbers of Barcelona so you give you like a little bit of context, but I'm sure you can relate to your own home places. So in the last 10 years in Barcelona, we've seen how rents have raised more than 50%, whereas like salaries only 3.4. That's a shame. Like the median price for a renting apartment equals the minimum salary set by the government, which means that 50% of households are in poverty risk. If we take a look onto the millennial and Gen Z generation, we see that there are adults that cannot rent an apartment on their own because it's like a financial risk or just literally impossible. And then we have like adults living sharing apartments unwillingly. Add to that numbers that there's a gender gap salary of 80% less if you are a woman or part of a minority collective. So run your numbers. We have a situation that increases the vulnerability of homes, puts home stability as well at risk, and then we cannot even talk about buying if renting it's already like an issue. So what we can do? Some people can rely on governments or NGOs, public goods associations, to get access to emergency homes or social housing prices. Like for example, in the Netherlands, the 30% of the total housing stock, it's social pricing. In Spain, guess what are the numbers? It's less than 2%. Which means that if you don't fall into the vulnerable enough category, if you cannot rely on the government, what can you do? So, short answer is self-organization. And I'm going to walk you through on how through self-organization we can move towards a market of speculative housing towards a self-organized, self-owned, and even like ecological, self-sustainable market owned by the community. I'm going to give you examples that are happening here around Barcelona so that you can see real practices and best use cases that are already taking place. So if we want to self-organize, where we can start. In Barcelona, there's a union of tenants, trade union of tenants, that started in 2017 called Sindicat de Llogateres, where they organize themselves to defend the rights of tenants against abusive landlords, which usually are big corporations. So every Friday, they hold assembly on the street where people can go there, expose their problem, and then get the help from the community and on the the roadmap and the exact steps to take action to defend themselves. And this organization currently it's spread all over Spain. Actually, they have just a subsection that it's only dedicated to solve abusive use cases from BlackRock, which is the largest property of homes in Spain. The other thing that we can do is promote bottom-up initiatives that limitate the housing prices. And again, here in Spain, it started because of an initiative of Sindicat de Llogateres that is currently being approved, actually 1 month ago or so, by the Spanish government that freezes and limits the rent prices. And this is not something happening only in Barcelona. We have tenant trade unions all over the world that are fighting for defending rights and are also fighting for regulating the housing market. But let's raise the bar on self-organization. We can even create collective cooperative housing in the form of use of spaces. And that means the ownership is at the cooperative, and then users of the cooperative can use the space by just paying a monthly fee or even a refundable initial payment. And this is the case of the first cooperative housing in Catalonia. It's called Calcasas, and they bought a land plus a rural home where they have the main facilities, the main kitchen, where they have these common dinners and lunches, and then they have the rest of the private spaces separately. What is interesting about this project is the people of the community have to dedicate at least 20 hours per week to the project. But they can do that either by workforce or by working outside and providing the money they earn outside to the community. Another example, and maybe some of you know it, it's Calafu. Vitalik and Amir Tagir, they spent some time there, so maybe that does ring the bell. This is another cooperative where the collective bought an industrial colony, and then they turn it into what they call a post-capitalist eco-industrial colony. Again, it's right of use spaces, the way they organize themselves in terms of ownership and governance. And then in this case, people just have to pay a small amount of money that it's lower than the market price. And the other example that I wanted to tell to you is Mas Las Viñas, which is another cooperative housing, but this time, instead of right of use spaces, users own a part of the cooperative and the property. And then in this case, it is a regenerative agriculture cooperative that it's also a big reference in the permaculture movement here in Catalonia, because it's a school of permaculture as well. So from these private initiatives that people started because they were self-organizing themselves, the administration saw an opportunity to create social housing with the collaboration of civil groups. So I'm going to walk you through some examples as well that are happening here in Barcelona, where the administration leases some plots to the communities, and then communities organize themselves to develop the plot and kind of like create a home for themselves. This is the case of La Borda, which is cooperative housing in Sants. The project started when the civil council leased the plot for 90 years in exchange of a small yearly fee. And then members have their own private spaces, and then they share a lot of like common or collectivized services, like solar panels, like heating systems. There's like co-working spaces, and even like a common place that it's kind of like can be used for whatever they want. You see here downstairs. And also, like, the design enhances social interactions, which this is also like a really cool thing to think when you are like designing this kind of like communities. And this is La Balma. It's kind of like follows the same pattern, also legal organization and efficiency in terms of like energy, etc., etc. But the cool thing is like the city council here, they reserve like 2 apartments for including vulnerable immigrants that were arriving to Barcelona. So this is a way to also like provide social housing plus inclusive like communities inside the social housing. And this example is a cooperative that we are imposing in a rural area nearby here, and follows the same structure as well. But in this case, the particularity is that the city council wants to save one of these homes for emergency housing, and they want to be like an active member of the community. And if we raise the bar on like self-organization, we even have like foundations of cooperative housing, and that's like a cool model, let's say, because it unlocks the properties outside the market and make sure that this model can stay like sustainable and long-term affordability. But this model also comes with some challenges. It's not all super like good news. There are like challenges on ownership and governance because there's limited room for innovation. Then the funding, banks doesn't recognize collective entities, so we have to go through ethical banks, public pools, or subsidizing. And then we have also challenges on, you know, teaching people, like training people on how to self-governance and themselves. There's analog coordination, and the process is long. So friends told me, like, Clara, I'm all in on this project, but you know, my rent expires in 3 months, so what do I do? We need to accelerate and scale this model, and I believe we can do that with the web3 and some technology. On one hand, we can customize ownership and governance, and for example, like issue, you know, like the same models that I was explaining to you, like own a share of the property or right of use of spaces. For example, like traditional Dream Factory just created a model where they issue token governance power to members who are spending time contributing to their co-living in Portugal. But we can kind of like go further, and we can create models where, you know, ownership is not only distributed by wealth, but also by meritocracy. So say that you dedicate an amount of hours or provide some value to the community, and then in exchange you can create and receive some ownership and governance from that. And also, Web3 can help us on, you know, manage treasuries, because currently like, we are delegating the power of managing a huge amount of money, to be honest, because construction funds and costs are high, to 2-3 people. And instead we can do that. We can delegate that power to software, smart contract that could be, you know, it's harder to get corrupted probably, or hacked. In terms of votations, we have the ability to customize setups. We can use token voting, like for example with Bogdoni. And I mention it because my mom knows how to use it. And for me, that's like a big challenge and a big like great news for onboarding new communities that not, you know, tech savvy into the space. And this could help us to get like faster and async coordination between the members of those communities. In terms of funding, We can create international and without intermediaries real-world asset tokenization and also like transactions, of course. We can create tokens that are, a part of like the ownership, or they give you like the right to use of a space. And if there are like NFTs involved, of course we can use royalties so that if price of those NFTs raise, we can use the benefit money to kind of like reinvest it into the communities, or even to expand the model and replicate into other new communities. So at scale, we can pool, we can stake, and we can use this money to build and create new homes for people, or even like donate it to create more emergency homes or more social housing. So we've seen how, through self-organization practices, we can defend tenant rights from abusive landlords. We can also approve laws that limit rents, and we can move from ownership and rental model towards a model of a stewardship. That model gives us like permanent right of use, or even we can meet nomad needs and allocate, temporary right of use of the spaces. And in this case, we have like some communities in the Web3 space that are already working on that line, like Oasa, Cabin, Cohere, and even Akia DAO. So this is like like an utopia. This is happening in real time. And if I want you to kind of like go home with the takeaway from here, like an idea, for me it's like the vision. To me, I guess that it just started when I was 4 and I started like drawing these giants and collective housing, but it has evolved. And imagine if, a part of like the total housing stock, instead of being in hands of a speculative international funds, it could be owned and run by community. We could move from a model where community benefits serve for creating new housing. We ensure that it's a long-term model, it's efficient, we can use like regenerative energies, regenerative materials, and we can create communities that can share spaces, amenities, utilities, and even like, social activities or an economy. And not stopping here, because I know that housing is really powerful and it has like a great impact on people's lives. So with housing communities, we could even like have an impact on how we educate our children, how we manage our older years, how we integrate elders in our lives also, and how we consume gods. So by creating intergenerational communities, we can do that. And I've just shown you that it's not utopia, like again, it's something that it's already happening. So thank you for being here, I really appreciate it. And I hope this was interesting for you. Thank you, Ethereum Barcelona, for having me. It was great.